There are places that don't feel wrong until it's too late. Places that look ordinary in the daylight, but at night, something about them shifts. The silence gets heavier, the air feels watched, and sometimes people walk into those places and never come back out. This story begins with two friends, a quiet coastline, and a lighthouse that should have been empty. On the night of May 27, 2018, 20-year-old Spencer Hale met up with his friend, Sophia Mercer, in a nearly deserted university parking lot by the shoreline. It was late past midnight, the kind of hour where even the wind feels like it's trying not to be heard. Sophia wasn't supposed to be out that night. In the weeks leading up to it, her life had been unraveling. She had just gotten out of a toxic relationship with a man named Austin, someone who didn't take rejection well. There were arguments, threats. One night, he even showed up at her apartment, pounding on the door hard enough that neighbors considered calling the police. After that, Sophia started spending more time with Spencer. They had history, briefly dated, then drifted into something quieter. Comfortable, safe. At least, that's what it seemed. Spencer had recently taken up a side job working on a small charter boat, and that night he had an idea. Something spontaneous, something reckless. They were going to take a small sailboat from the campus docks and head out into the water. No engine, just wind, current, and darkness. Their destination? An old lighthouse standing alone several miles offshore. Locals avoided it. Not officially, but enough stories had been passed around to give it a reputation. People said strange things about that place. Lights turning on when no one was inside. Sounds echoing across the water late at night. But to Spencer and Sophia, it was just a thrill, an adventure. At around 1:10 a.m., Sophia recorded a short video on Spencer's phone. The camera shook slightly as the small boat rocked against the water. Spencer laughed, paddling awkwardly while Sophia teased him from behind the lens. Behind them, the shoreline looked impossibly far away. Ahead, the lighthouse stood like a black silhouette against the sky. Still a long way to go, Sophia joked, turning the camera toward it. Neither of them sounded afraid. If anything, they sounded alive. That video would later become the last time anyone heard their voices. By 2 a.m., they had reached the lighthouse, a massive structure of concrete and rust, surrounded by nothing but open water. A faded "No trespassing" sign hung crookedly near the entrance. Spencer snapped a photo of Sophia standing in front of it. She was smiling. That image would be the last confirmed sighting of either of them. The next morning, Sophia's mother woke up to several missed calls from an unknown number. The timestamps were strange. 2:05 a.m., 2:07 a.m., 2:09 a.m. 3 calls, all within minutes of each other. When she called the number back, it rang once, then went dead. Later, investigators confirmed it was Spencer's phone. By evening, both of them were reported missing. Authorities launched a search across the water. Sophia's car was still in the parking lot where they had met. Nothing inside had been touched. At the lighthouse, they found something small but unsettling. A shirt, Spencer's shirt, tied tightly around a metal cleat on the dock, as if it had been used to secure the boat. But the boat itself? Gone. Drifting somewhere in the open ocean. Days passed before it was found. Floating upside down, miles away from the lighthouse, in the wrong direction. Inside, investigators noted something odd, partial fingerprints that didn't match either Spencer or Sophia. They were logged, but never fully analyzed. Then, 11 days later, Spencer's body was discovered, floating in open water, far from where the boat had been found, far from where the lighthouse stood. The official cause of death was ruled an accidental drowning. No signs of struggle, no injuries suggesting foul play, just water and silence. But Sophia was never found. At first, people assumed the simplest explanation. The boat came loose. Spencer tried to retrieve it. He fell and drowned. And Sophia? Maybe she panicked. Maybe she tried to help. Maybe she slipped and met the same fate. But something about that theory didn't sit right. Because of the calls. 3 calls, back to back, in the middle of the night. Why call her mother instead of emergency services? And why stop As weeks turned into months, theories began to grow. Some believed Sophia had been left alone on that lighthouse, stranded, terrified, calling for help into the darkness. Others believed someone else had been out there that night, passing boat, a stranger, someone who saw her before anyone else did. But there was never any proof, no witnesses, no signals, nothing, until something surfaced, not in the water, but online. A forgotten detail from that night, buried inside Spencer's phone records. Something that had been overlooked, or deliberately ignored. And once people noticed it, the story changed completely. Because those 3 calls, they weren't the only ones. Those 3 calls weren't the only ones. There was a 4th. It lasted just 6 seconds. Too short to register as anything meaningful, at least that's what investigators initially believed. No voicemail, no clear recording, just a brief connection and silence. But months later, when a digital analyst revisited the phone data, something unusual surfaced. That 6-second call hadn't been completely silent. There was audio, faint, distorted, almost buried beneath static. At first, it sounded like nothing more than wind, sharp gusts crashing against a microphone, then water, movement, scraping, and then a voice. Not Sophia's, not Spencer's, something low, unclear, just a few syllables too warped to fully understand. But one word stood out. Wait. When this detail quietly leaked online, it changed everything. Because if that voice didn't belong to either of them, then someone else had been there. Investigators tried to downplay it. They suggested audio distortion, signal interference, the mind hearing patterns where none exist. But the timing didn't make sense. The call happened at 2:11 a.m., 2 minutes after the last missed call. Right when everything went wrong. Let's go back to the lighthouse. Picture Sophia standing there alone. The boat gone. The water dark and endless. Spencer missing. Her phone dead. So she grabs his, calls her mother. Once, twice, 3 times. No answer. Panic rising. And then, something else enters the scene. There's one detail most people overlooked. When Spencer's body was found, the currents didn't match the drift pattern of the boat, meaning he didn't drown where the boat capsized. He drowned somewhere else. So what really happened that night? One theory suggests this. Spencer jumps into the water to secure the drifting boat. He struggles. Maybe the current pulls harder than expected. Maybe exhaustion sets in faster than he planned. He disappears beneath the surface. Sophia is left alone, calling for help, crying into the dark. And then, a light appears, not from shore, from the water. It's easy to assume rescue, passing boat, someone answering her calls for help. But what if it wasn't? What if whoever or whatever approached that lighthouse was already there, watching, waiting, because the lighthouse wasn't operational that night. No scheduled maintenance, no registered visitors, no boats logged in the area. And yet, multiple distant witnesses later claimed they saw a faint light near the structure around that same time. Moving, not steady like a beam, but shifting, searching. And those fingerprints on the boat, they were never matched. Not to any database, not to any known individual, just left unresolved, like everything else. If Sophia had fallen into the water, her body should have been found. Eventually, the ocean gives things back. But not her, not even a trace, which leaves one final possibility. The one no one wants to say out loud. Sophia didn't drown. She left that lighthouse with someone or something. And maybe that 6-second call was never meant to reach her mother. Maybe it connected by accident. Maybe it captured something it wasn't supposed to. A voice that wasn't hers. A presence that shouldn't have been there. Or maybe it wasn't telling her to wait. Maybe it was telling something else. Because out there, in the middle of open water, there's nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Only the sound of your own voice, until it isn't the only one anymore.